positives and eliminate the negatives, right? And this is where citizen diplomacy really comes in. So we did a study of CEOs and other C-suite executives earlier this year. Actually, it just released the findings 2 weeks ago. And 70% of these CEOs and other top business leaders agree that research has shown that anti-American sentiment has grown in other countries in part due to what is viewed as arrogant and culturally insensitive behavior of Americans abroad. And since thousands of Americans spend considerable time doing business elsewhere in the world, companies should ensure that their representatives outside the U.S. behave in a manner that builds understanding and respect for our country. And that's really, and these are CEOs, these are senior business leaders, talking about their own people, basically. And this is where citizen diplomacy really comes in. So right here, sitting at this table, right here in Burlington, Vermont, there are opportunities for the business community to get involved to address some of these issues that are both national as well as business related in nature. So how does citizen diplomacy contribute? Well, first, the cross-cultural experience of the people engaged in them. Many of the folks who I call global citizens have lived elsewhere in the world. Gail has lived in Norway and Russia and elsewhere. Many of these citizen diplomats have a lot of first-hand experience that's sitting here waiting to be tapped. Best practices and protocol. Again, any of you who've traveled internationally, you know things are done differently in different societies. They're not better, they're not worse, they're not right, they're not wrong, they're just different. And understanding those differences, or understanding how to recognize where those differences might lie, is so important in making your intercultural relations a much more enriching, much more profitable, much more enjoyable type of experience. Local community credibility. Again, citizen diplomats sit right here in your community. They're people you know. They're very involved, with whether it be with the chambers or with the universities and the school systems. Again, they are plugged into the community. Also, youth appeal of citizen diplomacy. The Zogby firm calls young Americans today, this generation of young Americans, the globals. And that this is truly the most globally oriented generation of young people that we have ever seen. So, and we'll see that in a moment when we look at what's happening here in Vermont, but we know that young people are curious about the world. They're really well connected to the world because of the internet. They can go to places we only could have dreamed of going to in our youth, i.e., albeit virtually, but nonetheless they are establishing those kinds of connections internationally. Citizen diplomats bring bilateral connections when people come in from other countries. And they also, I think, in many ways, and most importantly, bring access to global networks of all the people that you're dealing with from all over the world. You know, increasingly, the network is the key. And that really is where a citizen diplomacy group can come in so centrally. So, in terms of Vermont in the world, interesting, 33,000 passports were issued here last year, ranking you 6th nationally on a per capita basis. Again, students, more Vermont students are going abroad to study, and I think this is a mega trend in the higher education community. More and more students will be going abroad, and more students are going to be coming here, and they make a significant contribution to the Vermont economy by spending their tuition, their spending money, room and board here in the United States. So, to close, what are some thoughts about what you can do in the business community and the citizen diplomat community? First, tune into the world. And these days, because of the cutbacks in many of the traditional news media organizations, you really do have to go online to find a lot of what's really going on in the rest of the world. Here's an interesting site called watchingamerica.com. We post a lot of information on our website, businessfordiplomatic.org. Get involved. These are some of our board members. There are many other business groups, the Chambers, the Rotary International. Again, these types of groups we're hugely supportive of, are doing really important work in this area. The World Affairs Council, National Council for International Visitors, and Rotary foremost amongst them. Learn about cultures. There are formal programs. We have something up with the Thunderbird School of Global Management, but this is also where citizen diplomacy comes in. Meet with artists, meet with musicians, meet with people from other not only other parts of the world, but other walks of life who can really give you a richer portrait of the culture from which they come. We've published a World Citizens Guide for Business Executives. We say how to help your country while traveling for your company. And again, one of the tips, none of them are rocket science, but is again, act like a traveler, not a tourist, by learning about the culture. Learn a language would be great too. Now, we're not recommending that everyone in middle age go out and start to, study Chinese, Mandarin Chinese, or Arabic or something like that. But we would say, again, when traveling, at least always learn a couple of the key words. Please, thank you, hello, goodbye, yes, no. 6 will usually do, and will go a long way toward establishing really wonderful relations with the local people. Promote tourism and exchanges. We think this is vastly important. That final handshake, that final 3 feet between people is really the critical distance to cover to really understand cultures and make a difference long term. So not only do we work closely with the travel and tourism industry, but we have launched a private sector exchange program, not only to bring people from the Middle East to the United States to understand us, but also to send young American executives and entrepreneurs to the Middle East to understand them. And I can tell you, this is a shot from part of the group in Kuwait. 2 years ago, last year, we sent a group to Palestine, and they were blown away. All of their stereotypes about what Palestine is really all about were shattered. And finally, influence policy. There are a lot of things that need to be done that are in both the interests of the business community as well as the global citizen community that really need to be changed and need to be changed primarily in Washington. And I'd be happy to discuss any of those later on. We are a lobbying capable organization, and we love to get input on some of these issues from our constituencies around the country. But again, this is an important area of concern and focus too. So with that, I thank you for your attention, and I would welcome any questions. Thank you. Yes, there has been progress. It's still not perfect. They have cut the wait times for personal interviews down dramatically in quite a few countries. So from where we were, say, 3 or 4 years ago to where we are now, I think the State Department has worked very hard to improve in that area. They did get some funding for more consular officials to actually do the interviews and move things along. But there are still some parts of the world where it is a huge problem just to get the interview, much less get approved for the visa. Places like Brazil, India, and China, 3 of the most populous countries and also 3 of the most dynamic economies, it's still quite problematic. Again, our requirement to have a personal interview, frankly, we think has gone overboard. We think it's really not warranted for every single person who wants to come to the United States. It's a very costly thing to do if you just want to come here on vacation for many people. So those are the kinds of policies that ultimately would have to be changed by Congress if we want to see any progress there. So yes, there's been some forward motion, but we think there's a lot more that needs to be done. Yes?